everyone. It's the fourth edition of Elephant Fest, and I am very glad to have with me today the Professor Tim Spector, the author of the Spoon-Fed book. I have here the Romanian edition, which is already a bestseller in Romania, and we are very glad for that. Professor Tim Spector, Spoon-Fed, as I see it, is not just a book about nutrition. It's also a lifestyle manual. How did you decide to write it? Because you have a much broader interest.
Yeah, I decided to write it because really the last 12 years of my career, I've been focusing on nutrition, food, and gut health. And my previous book, The Diet Myth, was more about gut health, and it raised many questions as well as answers. And a lot of these questions were about how come we've got these fixed ideas about food? How come we all of us believe that calories are important? Why do we believe these myths? And as I got to study it more, it became apparent that it was a mixture of things. Not only was the old science bad, but also there were strong influences from the big food companies, and also governments working with food companies to give us this false idea that we actually knew the science behind food, and that was used to sell us more bad food. So in a way, this book is about, as you said, not just about nutrition, although it explains what the old myth was, why actually it's wrong, and then how that came about, and how how it was that we believed everything we were told, whether it was at school or university or by the governments or even by the food companies and the labels they put on food, how we got to be in this bad place. So I think it's very important that everyone understands the environment of food and nutrition so that we can actually start to get it right again.
Yes, we have in the book 23 chapters, most of them about nutrition myths. Can you tell me what are the most dangerous myths around diet and food?
Well, in the book, I'm listing really 23 myths, so you can take your pick. And everything from the myth that doctors know best to the myth about fish always being good for you. But I think the most important one that we've been indoctrinated most is about the importance of the calorie. That we've used the calorie myth to really stop us talking about the quality of food. So it's like, it doesn't matter what you eat as long as it's low in calories. And that has been terrible for food in general. It means that we've eaten more ultra-processed food that is theoretically low in calories, but because it's processed, it makes us eat more. So I think, to me, that's the most dangerous one. Also, the fact that people believe that low-calorie diets allow them to lose weight. And we know that's not true if you ignore the food quality and the type of the food you're eating. And also we know that for two people, the identical meal, identical calories can have very different effects. So that would be, if I had to destroy one, that would be the one top of my list.
I understand. I think we are living a paradox. The internet is full of diets, nutritional advices, nutritionists, but we are lacking the nutritional education. How can we could balance these two extremes?
Well, I think food and nutrition is so important. It's a choice that all of us make hundreds of times a day, and we're not taught how to do it properly. This is something that should be mainstream in schools, universities. Everyone, whether they're a doctor or nurse, should be an expert in this, but it needs to start with young children, and back in the families, everyone needs to know how to cook, where foods come from. And we learn many things at school and education that aren't useful, practical things for us. And now food is so important for the future of the planet. I think all of us need to treat it just like learning to read or write. We should also, learning maths, we should also learn about food and keep that going for the whole of our lives. That's what it needs to take, because we've always treated it as a very simplistic, easy subject, and it's not. It's complicated, but it's probably the most important subject we'll learn in our lives.
Yes. You said in Spoon-Fed, and I quote, "Restrictive diets aren't the secret to staying slim. The key is diversity." So I'm asking you, what should we eat in normal times, and what should we need to eat to stay healthy during a pandemic like this one?
Okay, well, what I meant by diversity was that by understanding that a lot of the healthy effects of food are brought on by the effect of food on our gut health. And by gut health, I mean our microbes inside our gut. We can then start to understand what foods are good and which ones are bad. And we know that the people with the healthiest gut health, the healthiest microbes, are the ones that have eat the most different types of plant every week. And so we showed in some experiments that around 30 different types of plant, i.e. a big diversity of plants, is the secret to success. So there's no point eating exactly the same type of cabbage every day in large quantities, and or the same beetroot soup or whatever it is. You need variety, and that can be with nuts and seeds and many other small herbs and spices. So a sort of very broad, diverse Mediterranean style cuisine that varies every day is really what's crucial, because that helps the microbes. And this is even more important in the era of COVID-19, because we've shown that the quality of your diet is crucial in how severe your COVID is. So whether you go to hospital or whether you die from it, the number of symptoms is related to not just your obesity, not just whether you're poor or rich, but actually the quality and the number of plants in your diet. So we know that therefore gut health is really key for your immune system as well. So extra reason to really think about changing your diet and your type of food you eat now.
Yeah, because you mentioned gut health, I know that in the last years there has been an explosion of interest in and research around the microbiome. And from your own studies, what would you say are the key findings in this area?
Key findings in the microbiome, I think, are that it's associated with nearly every common disease that we've looked at in some way. And it's particularly crucial for every disease related to the immune system, such as cancers, and also our response to medications. So the reason we respond differently to food, for example, or we respond differently to medication like painkillers or antidepressant tablets is due to our different microbes. And we're starting to understand that microbes are really chemical factories. They respond to food by producing lots of chemicals, and some of them go to your brain and can make you happy or make you sad if you have the wrong ones. They can make you hungry. They can make you full. And so we're starting to realize just how important the microbes are. They're really like a new organ in your body, like your liver or your kidney. And we have to treat it with much more respect and make sure we feed it right. So I think that's important. But also the other recent finding is that unlike our genes, where we share 99% of them with each other, we share only about 25% of our gut microbes. So our uniqueness in terms of our health is probably related to our uniqueness in terms of our gut microbes more than it is our genes. And the good thing is, unlike genes, you can change your microbes with food and good diet.
Right. I know you're a professor of genetic epidemiology at the King's College in London. How did you choose to specialize in genetic epidemiology?
Well, my career has changed several times. So I trained in medicine, and I was originally a rheumatologist, and that was studying bones and joints. And then I studied epidemiology. And then I started my twin study about 28 years ago. And studying twins, you need to know about genetics. So I taught myself genetics and became a genetic epidemiologist. And now I've changed again, and my title would probably be nutritional epidemiologist or gut health epidemiologist or whatever. So names aren't important, but I think it's my career by using twins has allowed me to explore what I think are the most exciting areas of science.
So please give us a few more details about the Twins UK Registry and your research about them.
So it's the largest UK twin register. It has 15,000 twins that we see regularly, and they're probably the best studied people on the planet. So we scan them, we bleed them, we look at their gut contents, we biopsy them, and we've learned so much from them over the last 25 years about how similar they are for certain diseases, how certain diseases are genetic, but others are much more environmental. And we learned that many diseases we thought were just related to aging are actually much more related to genetics, like back pain, for example, is more genetic than breast cancer. And so these things were a surprise at the time. For the last 10 years, I've been using the twins, identical twins, to see how identical twins are often different, get different cancers or get different immune diseases. And we think this is all due to having different microbes, even identical twins. So that's really how we've used it. And then recently in these nutrition studies with the company Zoe that I co-founded, we've been seeing that even identical twins respond very differently to the same food. So if you give two identical twins identical food, they will have a different metabolic response. And I think this is one of the real values of twins currently.
And I don't know if I understood correctly. Did you use the twins for COVID-19 research?
Yes, we did. We looked at the genetics of COVID and found that it, in general, was not very genetic. There was a small genetic component, but it wasn't major, a bit similar to the response to food. And we also looked at twins and long COVID and found there was, some genetic component into whether you got long COVID. And we did some studies showing how how quickly the antibodies form, etc. So that was another way we've used the twin data, because very early in the pandemic, we managed to get blood samples on the twins and saw what percentage of people had antibodies after the first infections, and found very quickly that give us an estimate of how much COVID was going on in the UK. So they've been really useful, and particularly in looking at the types of symptoms people have. And we combined the twin data with the big national data from the Zoe COVID study app, where we have 4 million people using it. And we were able to make, we were the first really to find that loss of smell and taste was a symptom of COVID. Also COVID skin rashes, COVID toes, COVID tongue. All this came from the apps, which was used both in the twins and in the general population. So twins have been very valuable.
So impressive. I read in an old interview of you that on a typical day you take time to meditate after breakfast. Is there any link between a spiritual routine and the way our bodies respond to stress, or how our bodies perform during a day?
That's a tough question. I think there's evidence that people who do yoga or meditate at regular times do deal with stress better and have a lower blood pressure. But personally, I find I do it because I can concentrate better. When I have a busy day, I don't try and do everything. I can focus better. And that for me is one of the important things of meditation. But in general, I think a bit like it's similar to getting a good night's sleep. If you can have it regularly, it sets up your metabolism properly. And so we know from our studies with the Zoe app that if you sleep well the night before, you metabolize your food better the next day. So I suspect that meditation does the same as a good night's sleep, because the key is not necessarily just the length of sleep, but it's the quality and the timing. So I'm still doing it because I enjoy, I feel better after it. So I'm hoping it's doing me good, but I don't have hard proof for myself yet.
I understand. And now my last question, which is also a request for our Romanian readers. If you'd give a piece of advice for them for a good life, what would you say?
Well, I think making sure if you want to live a good, healthy life and reduce your chances of depression and other problems, you really need to look after your gut and your gut health. And that means having a rich diversity of microbes in your gut. And so every time you eat, you're thinking not about calories, not about fat levels, but you're thinking, is this good for my gut? Just like a farmer would, or a gardener for the soil in their plants. And I've come up with like four basic points to remember, I think, which are useful. The first one is, when we remembered, is to try and eat 30 different types of plant in a week. And that includes nuts and seeds and herbs and spices. The second is to pick vegetables and plants that are high in a natural defense chemical called polyphenols. These are antioxidant chemicals that often give the plant a slight bitter taste, or what's called astringency on the tongue, like red grapes, for example, or a slightly bitter broccoli, or some cabbages. And pick plants that are dark in color, bright blues, reds, and avoid very boring vegetables like iceberg lettuce, for example, that have 0 polyphenols. And remember that some things like coffee and red wine and extra virgin olive oil all have extremely high polyphenol contents, and so are good to eat, and you can have as much of those as you want. And also high concentration dark chocolate. So things that you wouldn't necessarily think are good for you can be good for you. The third tip, and I know Romanians do this naturally, is to have fermented foods.
Yeah.
And so as well as yogurt, and always pick full fat yogurt without fruit or other artificial ingredients. You have also kefir, which is fermented milk, which has even 5 times more microbes. But then you have kombucha. I don't know whether you have that in Romania or not, but that's fermented tea. Supposedly came from Mongolia. Then you can be like the Germans, but I know a lot of Central and Eastern Europe like fermented vegetables. And I know particularly Romanians are fond of these. And as long as there's no vinegar in it, it's all done naturally with the salt and the brine. These are really excellent. And so having a small amount of these things regularly is really good for your gut. So some of those old-fashioned things that your grandmother used to tell you what to do, it turns out the reason it's good is it's for your gut health. And you don't have to have huge amounts, but small regular amounts is what's important. And the final tip is avoid eating too many ultra-processed foods. And these are foods that you get in packets that do not look like the original ingredients at all. And when you read the label, they have 10 or 20 different ingredients that you would never find in your kitchen. And these are designed to make you eat more of them and designed to be poor for your gut health and make you put on weight. So they're the 4 general tips, but for the rest of it, you'll have to read the full book to get everything out of it. But that's a very short summary. So some of the things Romanians are doing traditionally have been good, but there's, I'm sure, plenty more tips that people could get out of the book and improve their gut health.
Thank you very much, Professor Spector. It was a great discussion we had. And maybe, I don't know, in the future, you'll visit Romania and you'll have some of our traditional healthy food.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.